Hi, this is Ryan at Clovis Star Media. It's December 26th in the wee hours of the morning. Just wanted to make an update on a couple of media clips that I've saw. One that was really exciting to me because I've always considered Bono more of a socialist, leftist, statist type, always asking for government intervention in his past. I've seen a lot of benefits that he's done, calling for government assistance and taxes and things to pay for different issues, different concerns of his. Well, now, as of August, he seems to have become educated on the ways of capitalism and how it helps people. And in his speech in August, he said, "Capitalism brings more people out of poverty than any other system." Amazing. I mean, I never thought I'd hear that out of Bono's mouth. And then this city council member who just won a seat on Seattle City Council, Kshama Sawant, she's claiming that all capitalists are criminals in our society, and she won a seat by promising everybody to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I don't see that helping anybody on a lot of basis. Minimum wage has always been detriment to low-income people. You can look at Thomas Sowell's, you know, writings or interviews on this topic. Lots of different, very educated and qualified economists have said the same thing. But what it does is it raises the price for goods to consumer, goods and services to consumers. So the people making $15 an hour will then be paying higher prices for the things they consume. Business owners who also are into real estate typically will raise their rent. The quality of life goes up supposedly when people are making $15 an hour, so the real estate becomes worth more. So people who either want to buy a house or rent end up paying more to buy the house or more to rent the house than before the $15 an hour increase. So those are two of the obvious consequences. But then you got to look at employers, who may have plenty of staff right now at the current wages, and when the wages rise to $15 an hour, they're going to expect more from their employees. So the employees that were making $7.50, $8 an hour, that now are making $15 an hour, they're going to be expected to do twice the work, which means the employer is likely to let one employee go and keep another. For every two employees, they're going to reduce their staff possibly in half. Possibly, but that seems like a reasonable consequence. If you're going to be getting paid more, you're going to be doing twice the work. And then you're going to see, people that would be consuming in that area who are now paying higher prices for their goods and services, now going outside of the area to other, municipalities, say Bellevue or Tacoma or, whatever, Tukwila or, outside of Seattle's boundaries to get their services or their goods, because Seattle has become more expensive to do business and to get the things they want or need. So there's going to be a loss of businesses, there's going to be a loss of jobs, there's going to be an increase in the cost for goods and services, and the quality of life is going to decrease. Except for, the people who are independently wealthy and don't need to make any more. Those people, like Bill Gates perhaps, they're going to be doing just fine, but the lowest on the totem pole are going to be suffering. So I want to show you the clip from both the socialist city council member and from Bono from U2. Amazing transformation from Bono. So congrats to free market enterprise on such a great speech from Bono. I mean, I think that really helps promote the ideas that free market capitalists have. I myself, and I know most of the people I know who are capitalists, want to see everybody do well, and we do that by providing jobs, by trading with one another, by being community oriented, by helping the community when we can, and doing it voluntarily. So anyway, check these clips out.
My brothers and sisters, thank you all for for being here. My name is Kshama Sawant. I am a teacher, an activist, a socialist, and I'm running for Seattle City Council. The outrageous verdict last Saturday laid bare the deep racism of the U.S. criminal justice system before the eyes of a new generation of youth, before all of us. How can we find justice for Trayvon and the countless victims of racial, class, and gender oppression? We have to fight to repeal all the stand your ground laws. We have to fight tooth and nail for it. Repealing the laws will no doubt be a big step forward. But let's be honest with ourselves. Do you think that repealing this law would end racism and oppression? No! In reality, we can have no faith in the courts or in the American justice system as a whole. Our task is far bigger than the repeal of a single law. We need to recognize what is at the root of racism, this hatred and fear of black people, of people of color, of poor people. The root cause of these blatantly unjust laws is the capitalist system itself. Capitalism is a system that bases itself on massive inequality. This system does not work for us. Racism is necessary for this oppressive system to exist. It prevents ordinary people from coming together of different races and turning their fire towards Wall Street, corporate politicians, and the ruling elite as a whole. Those thugs, the bankers, the billionaires, the capitalists, they are the criminals of our society. They are amassing unimaginable wealth by exploiting the rest of us and maintaining their power by dividing us. We must reject this divide and rule and build an independent, united, working class movement that will put on trial American racism, sexism, class and gender exploitation, and capitalism itself. Racial profiling did not just happen for Trayvon. Racial profiling does not just happen in Florida. Racial profiling is happening right here in Seattle. Yeah. It is our job to recognize that the police department represents the interests of the very wealthy who want to maintain massive inequality. They are defending the very system that oppresses us, people of color, young people, and the poor. And I know that at times like this, those democratic politicians will come here to pay lip service, and they'll come where the political winds are blowing. But let us not forget that they are the ones presiding over this oppressive system. We have to build our own movement together and dismantle the system of capitalism and racism and stand in solidarity. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Thank you. Justice.
So some of Africa is rising and some of Africa is stuck. The question is whether the rising bit will pull the rest of Africa up or whether the other Africa will weigh the continent down. Which will it be? Stakes here aren't just about them. Imagine for a second this last global recession, but without the economic growth of China and India, without the hundreds of millions of newly minted middle-class folks who now buy American and European goods. Imagine that. Think about the last 5 years. Rockstar preaches capitalism. Wow. Sometimes I hear myself and I just can't believe it. But commerce is real. That's what you're about here. It's real. Aid is just a stopgap. Commerce, entrepreneurial capitalism takes more people out of poverty than aid. Of course, we know that.
No, I am concerned about what we do for people who are presently in a very disadvantaged position because of what's happened in the economic
We try to remove
crisis.
as many of the barriers as possible that have put them in that position.
And you think the barriers that have put them in that position are, for example, a minimum wage law?
Minimum wage laws, labor unions, occupational licensing.
Would you abolish labor unions? Huh? Would you abolish labor unions?
You don't have to abolish labor unions. I'm saying that if you're asking me what are some of the things that have done it, I'm giving you some of the things that have done it. Blacks were well represented in many occupations, skilled occupations in the South 2 or 3 generations ago to a greater extent than today, because 2 or 3 generations ago, those industries were not unionized. Construction, railroads, just classic examples. When we have this so-called Philadelphia plans to get blacks into the construction industry, I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so tragic. Blacks were heavily into the construction industry before it was unionized.
Well, again, I come back to the here and now. Assuming that they are not heavily in the construction industry now, what would you do to cure it? Because I would do think
I would do away with or otherwise mitigate the effects of those things that are keeping blacks out of those industries.
Forgive me, but he has said that 3 times.
Well, he has not taken up the cause of those people who would not be immediately affected by changing those laws. In addition to
the acoustics must be very bad in here.
He can't create employment, as he's elsewhere pointed out. To say that somebody should receive more money than he is now making and to pass a law to that effect is not, in fact, to give him a job for more money. But it may very well be to cause unemployment.
I gather that there are many instances where the minimum wage provisions have been waived or do not apply, where the employers have nonetheless not taken advantage of it. So I don't know what empirical...
I'm not sure of that at all. I know that there are provisions of the law under which, if you're willing to go through enough red tape, you can get certain exemptions. Particularly for the person who's hiring 1 or 2 people, he may decide that it's just not worth his while.
Would it be your feeling that if all the affirmative action programs were discontinued, women and minorities would go ahead much faster than they have under the affirmative action program?
Yes, it's not my opinion. The data indicate that, for example, Puerto Ricans had a higher percentage of the national average income before quotas than after. So did Mexican Americans. Blacks have about the same. So there's a marvelous putting of the burden on other people. You're saying here's this massive program that has existed now for a decade, and you're unable to show me the benefits that have come from all this enormous controversy.
Well, it certainly has been a revolution insofar as women's participation in the labor force.
Not really. Not really. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
I know that of my own knowledge.
No, you don't know it of your own knowledge, because I've also looked at the same thing. And in the past, you found women overrepresented in many professional occupations, much more so than today, and you find that decline in those occupations much more highly correlated with a lower age of marriage for college women and with more childbearing. And as those 2 things, those 2 demographic factors have changed, women have also changed in their representation. So there's this whole myth that's been created that this is all a function of political developments of the past decade or so, just will not stand up.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pilpel. And thank you very much, Dr. Thomas Sowell, author.
So just to wrap it up, to make my point very clear, I think the free market does work. I think that it gets messed up when there's cronyism. I think that when a government gets involved to, for example, sponsor grants for a certain industry or buy commodities at a fixed price, adverting market prices, to give benefits to a particular industry, such as the sugar industry or the oil industry or other industries. See, that's cronyism. It's not really capitalism at all. Free market capitalism is an entirely different mechanism. The markets adjust the price based on supply and demand, not governments, not cronyism, not laws and regulations, but supply and demand. And as far as these people who are, shaming capitalism and calling capitalists the criminals of society, I understand that these people may have a hard time finding a job. They may be feeling the effects of the bad economy. I get that. My advice to them is, and I saw a lot of these people out there with that city council member protesting, and a lot of them had metal hanging out of their face, and they were dressed in crazy clothes, particularly dressed in a certain way to probably draw attention. But things like the metal hanging out of their face, I mean, if you want a job that pays above average, You might want to go to work looking less hostile or less, you know, um, affected by, poverty or anger or whatever it is that you look like. There's a lot of different styles out there, but I even have tattoos. I mean, I like tattoos, but I can cover them up. I can go to work, and I can go to work looking like I mean business. And for the companies out there that may be willing to pay an above average wage, an above minimum wage, such as $15 an hour or whatever, well, they probably are looking for somebody to, effectively represent their company. And metal hanging out of your face and acting all crazy probably isn't going to get you that job. So that's my advice. You want to look at socialism for what it is. Look at National Socialism in Germany, World War II. Look at Russia, Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. You look at that, how people starved to death because the market wasn't adjusting prices correctly, and loaves of bread were being fixed at a week's worth of wages at one time. Millions of people starving. You look at what happened in Cuba, and now they're going back to capitalism because they were importing over 80% of their food supply up until just recently, and now they're going back to capitalism. They're importing less. You look at like Che Guevara, that big socialist leader of Cuba. That guy, as far as racism, what this city council member was talking about, you look at that guy. He's like the champion of socialism. Everybody wears the Che Guevara hats and shirts and propaganda. Talking about this freedom fighter Che Guevara. Well, look at his books that he wrote about Africa, being in the Congo and stuff. The guy was very racist, did not like blacks, murdered homosexuals, and was very sexist. You look at his books, you look at his writings, you'll see this guy was no friend to, the minority or the disaffected groups. He was very much prejudiced and hateful, and his society of socialism failed miserably in Cuba. That's why they're going back to capitalism now.